Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is a virtual version of the Park Slope Food Co-op cooking class, and we're really fortunate to have Nupur with us today. I met her at a workshop for writing recipe cookbooks, right? She runs a vegetarian food delivery service in Queens called Queens Curry Kitchen. She's a real advocate for demystifying Indian food. So part of her business is teaching hands-on cooking classes, and very much about learning more to cook at home, feeding ourselves, and creating communion with our families by eating together at home. So she's got a great class lined up for you. She's a real awesome presence. So, and I also want to say at the end of the class that I'll unmute everyone so we can give her a little thank you and a show of gratitude at the end. Okay, so yes.
All right. So, hi everybody. I think she just glorified me way more than what I deserve, but I'm going to try to live up to that expectation that she just created. I have some pretty big shoes to fill. So, I am Nupur and I live in Queens. I make curry in my kitchen, hence the name Queens Curry Kitchen. Pardon the mess. Ignore that it doesn't exist. But that tells you that this kitchen is used every single day, right? So before we start, I just have a quick question, and I know that Uni or Jeff is either one of you is monitoring the chat, so I would really like some honest answers to this one. So let's just pretend for a moment that all our pots and pans can talk, right? So if you are going to go into your kitchen, what is the one song that your pots and pans are going to sing for you? Is it going to be option A, Together Forever and Ever? Option B, a few stolen moments is all that we share. You know who you are and you know what category you belong to, right? So I'm trying to put everybody in option A instead of option B. So if you've hardly cooked or you cook and everything becomes hard, class is for you. We're going to start with veg hakka noodles, and the genre of food that we're doing today is something that's very underrepresented in the restaurant scene, especially in New York and a lot of American restaurants. So this is the marriage of Indian and Chinese food. And the way it came to be was that the opium trade had actually brought a lot of Chinese settlers into the borders of India, and West Bengal, which is where the East India Company first put out its roots, was actually where they settled. So over a period of time, the opium trade actually collapsed. But by those years, these Chinese settlers had already had two generations or one generation that had, procreated, married locals. They had adapted to the food cultures of Calcutta, of West Bengal, and there was no way they were going back because their next generation wasn't identifying as Chinese. They used to call themselves, Indian Chinese people. So this marriage of cultures was actually also a marriage of cuisines. And today, what we see in the Indian Chinese genre has nothing, hardly any bearing to the original form of Chinese cooking, even though it's a very evolved culinary culture. A lot of the spices from the Indian repertoire went and joined it. A lot of cooking techniques actually got replaced. So I'm going to show you two recipes. One is hakka noodles. And for that, I've used, it's called Hakka because there's a province in Hakka. So I'm just using regular store-bought noodles from the supermarket. These are like, I think, $1.50. And they come in little discs like this. But you can use anything that you have. And anything that you see in this recipe, don't feel like you have to get out of the perfection mode. So if you see something that you don't have, or you can substitute it with, just be creative, make it your own, and work on it, just so that you can make it your own for your family. If you do soba noodles, you can do it with this. If you do any other kind of gluten-free noodles, do it with that. You can do it with rice vermicelli. So whatever you got, right? So I've already boiled it according to package instructions, and it should be stringy, not sticky. Let me just show you what it looks like. And that's super important because these are also going to get tossed around. So you see how stringy it is? It's stretchy and stringy, but it's not gloppy. So once you've cooked it to package instructions, give it a quick rinse under cold water and then hit it with some oil and give it a toss. So that keeps the gluten from, sticking to the noodles. And you can see each noodle is kind of just standing on its own. So you do have to hit it with some oil. If you don't do oil, you can do some cooking spray. So these are ready to go. Now we're going to work on what's called the tempering. And for that, we are going to start with some oil. When we go to fancy restaurants where we see people working on the wok, there's like a definite skillmanship that's associated with giving it a toss and, swirling the food. But at home, we can't do that. So I will teach you a hack that will replicate that without you having to do any risky moves. So the first thing we do is drizzle oil along the walls of the wok. And this is on a hot plate burner, but if you do it on a flame, the walls get super hot. So that's a really good way to do your stir fry. And also with Chinese cooking, any kind of Chinese that you're making, just do your prep beforehand because things go really fast. It's like a roller coaster and then you don't want to burn your stuff. Okay, so we are going to start with onions. I'm using red, but if you have white, okay, use it, okay? So we're going to use some onions. I've taken red onions and I've cut them into little strips. It goes in. Just wait for the wok to be really hot and smoking. That's the best thing.
Can you use spaghetti?
This is half an onion. I'm going to turn up the heat even more.
Spaghetti? Is it okay to use spaghetti for the noodles?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thin spaghetti does better than angel hair. So if that's what you have, honey, go for it.
What kind of oil do you recommend?
What cooking oil? I'm working with light olive oil. You can work with peanut. You can work with whatever you have. Anything that has a high smoking point is good. So since the onions are doing their thing, this is going to go a little bit slower than it would have gone on an actual flame or a stovetop. So try to hear some wok 101s. I can use something as fancy as this as well. This is great if you have this, but you know what? This whole thing really has my heart because it's gone through so many seasonings and so many conditionings that it just chars my food beautifully. So make sure you lay out all of your stuff across, not to pile it up, but just to lay it across so that each part of it is in contact with the heat. And you have to give it a few seconds. Accidentally, a couple of bell peppers fell in, but hey, they're not complaining anymore. Hi, everybody. I think she just glorified me way more than what I deserve. But I'm going to try to live up to that expectation that she just created. I have some pretty big shoes to fill. So I am Nupur and I live in Queens. I make curry in my kitchen, hence the name Queens Curry Kitchen. Pardon the mess. Ignore that it doesn't exist. But that tells you that this kitchen is used every single day, right? So before we start, I just have a quick question, and I know that Uni or Jeff is either one of you is monitoring the chat, so I would really like some honest answers to this one. So let's just pretend for a moment that all our pots and pans can talk, right? So if you are going to go into your kitchen, what is the one song that your pots and pans are going to sing for you? Is it going to be option A, Together Forever and Ever? Option B, a few stolen moments is all that we share. You know who you are and you know what category you belong to, right? So I'm trying to put everybody in option A instead of option B. So if you've hardly cooked or you cook and everything becomes hard, class is for you. We're going to start with veg Hakka noodles, and the genre of food that we're doing today is something that's very underrepresented in the restaurant scene, especially in New York and a lot of American restaurants. So this is the marriage of Indian and Chinese food. And the way it came to be was that the opium trade had actually brought a lot of Chinese settlers into the borders of India, and West Bengal, which is where the East India Company first put out its roots, was actually where they settled. So over a period of time, the opium trade actually collapsed. But by those years, these Chinese settlers had already had two generations or one generation that had, procreated, married locals. They had adapted to the food cultures of Calcutta, of West Bengal, And there was no way they were going back because their next generation wasn't identifying as Chinese. They used to call themselves, Indian Chinese people. So this marriage of cultures was actually also a marriage of cuisines. And today what we see in the Indian Chinese genre has nothing, hardly any bearing to the original form of Chinese cooking, even though it's a very evolved culinary culture. A lot of the spices from the Indian repertoire went and joined it. A lot of cooking techniques actually got replaced. So I'm going to show you two recipes. One is Hakka noodles. And for that, I've used, it's called Hakka because there's a province in Hakka. So I'm just using regular store-bought noodles from the supermarket. These are like, I think, $1.50. And they come in little discs like this. But you can use anything that you have. And anything that you see in this recipe, don't feel like you have to get out of the perfection mode. So if you see something that you don't have, or you can substitute it with, just be creative, make it your own, and work on it, just so that you can make it your own for your family. If you do soba noodles, you can do it with this. If you do any other kind of gluten-free noodles, do it with that. You can do it with rice vermicelli. So whatever you got, right? So I've already boiled it according to package instructions, and it should be stringy, not sticky. Let me just show you what it looks like. And that's super important because these are also going to get tossed around. So you see how stringy it is? It's stretchy and stringy, but it's not gloppy. So once you've cooked it to package instructions, give it a quick rinse under cold water, and then hit it with some oil and give it a toss. So that keeps the gluten from, sticking to the noodles. And you can see each noodle is kind of just standing on its own. So you do have to hit it with some oil. If you don't do oil, you can do some cooking spray. So these are ready to go. Now we're going to work on what's called the tempering. And for that, we are going to start with some oil. When we go to fancy restaurants where we see people working on the wok, there's like a definite skillmanship that's associated with giving it a toss and, swirling the food. But at home, we can't do that. So I will teach you a hack that will replicate that without you having to do any risky moves. So the first thing we do is drizzle oil along the walls of the wok. And this is on a hot plate burner, but if you do it on a flame, the walls get super hot. So that's a really good way to do your stir fry. And also with Chinese cooking, any kind of Chinese that you're making, just do your prep beforehand because things go really fast. It's like a roller coaster, and then you don't want to burn your stuff. Okay, so we are going to start with onions. I'm using red, but if you have white, okay, use it, okay? So we're going to use some onions. I've taken red onions and I've cut them into little strips. It goes in. Just wait for the wok to be really hot and smoking. That's the best thing.
Can you use spaghetti?
This is half an onion. I'm going to turn up the heat even more.
Spaghetti? Is it okay to use spaghetti for the noodles?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thin spaghetti does better than angel hair. So if that's what you have, honey, go for it.
What kind of oil do you recommend?
What cooking oil? I'm working with light olive oil. You can work with peanut. You can work with whatever you have. Anything that has a high smoking point is good. So since the onions are doing their thing, this is going to go a little bit slower than it would have gone on an actual flame or a stovetop. So try to hear some wok 101s. I can use something as fancy as this as well. This is great if you have this, but you know what? This whole thing really has my heart because it's gone through so many seasonings and so many conditionings that it just chars my food beautifully. So make sure you lay out all of your stuff across, not to pile it up, but just to lay it across so that each part of it is in contact with the heat. And you have to give it a few seconds. Accidentally, a couple of bell peppers fell in, but hey, they're not complaining, and nor am I. You can also add the carrots because they tend to take a long time. These are just some regular carrots that have julienne. And depending on how many noodles you're making, you can make it really vegetable heavy. You can make it light on vegetables and more with this. If you want to do maybe throw in an egg or chicken, depending on what you eat, you can do it with that. You can do shrimps. So there's a lot of variations that are possible. So you'll see as it starts to cook, what I am going to do is I will take these vegetables and push them to the back. Okay, and this is going to be especially good if you're working on the stove top. Push them to the back so they will continue to cook, and then it gives you all this room towards the front where you can still keep working on the next ingredient and the next ingredient. So push them to the back. The heat will keep doing its thing. I'm going to bring it back into the middle again because it needs a few seconds. But once they start getting that char, you can push them to the back. They will continue to cook, and then you work in the little space that's available. And that's how it goes. So the carrots have gone in. Now I'm going to add some garlic. I've minced it. You can chop it finely, and ginger. So in Indian Chinese, there's a lot of ginger and garlic, like a lot. I mean, copious amounts of ginger and garlic. And the trick to making the garlic flavor last is that just before you're about to take your dish off the stove, hit it with some raw garlic and take it off the heat. So that helps to keep that garlickiness intact, and it's super, super, super high on garlic flavor, the Indian style Chinese. And also the soy sauce, which is from Indian brands, is usually darker than this. If you're using liquid aminos, you know how dark or light it's going to be. So I would say, use your judgment, work with the ingredients that you have. Okay, now you can really start to smell the ginger and the garlic, and I've spread it into the pan. Nothing is piled on. This heat is on full, and it's going to take a second. I guess once it gets super hot, then it really goes fast. So like I said, if you're working on a stove top, you would be on to the next step. Okay, if anybody has any questions that are either Indian Chinese related or Indian food related, I'm happy to answer those. I think Jeff is monitoring the chat box from there.
I am.
Yeah. Okay, so we will also be adding. It's going to take a few seconds more. I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add the cabbage. I've cut it fine, but it shouldn't be too fine because you don't want it to get lost. So not too wide, but then not too thin either. You see, like a ribbon, as wide as that. So you definitely want it to get some color. And I'm going to do the pushing back technique.
Nupur, where do you shop for, if I wanted to get Indian soy sauce?
Yeah.
Where would I shop for that?
You can shop in Indian grocery stores. They have Indian style soy sauce, and a good brand is Ching's is a good brand. So you can get it if you live in Manhattan. You can go to the stores on Lexington Avenue and 28th. They have it. Okay, so you can see that the ginger and the garlic are actually caramelizing. So I'm going to push all of the first lot of vegetables to the back so they can keep working with the heat. And to this area that I've just created, yes, regular green cabbage. And listen, if you don't have green and you have purple, hey, use that. Whatever your family eats. I feel like sometimes we just don't try anything new because we don't know how it's going to go down. So if your family only likes a certain kind of cabbage or a certain kind of carrot or a certain kind of bell pepper, just follow that. Once they get comfortable with it, you can slowly sneak in some new things. It's very disheartening to spend a lot of time trying this new recipe and then people won't eat it, right? We don't want that. By the way, everybody wants to change the world. Everybody wants to control climate change, but nobody wants to help mom do the dishes. So we're going to use the same wok for everything. We are not trying to create more dishes for mom. And as parents, we have to really bond together and pick the battles that we can win. We are not about to pick any losing battles. That is my philosophy. Don't tell my daughter, but I think it works. Okay, so now the cabbage is kind of fully exposed to the base of the wok, and these vegetables are in the back. So they're going to continue to cook, but now the cabbage is going to get a little bit of a char. That's what we're going for. The next things that we're going to use are this, which is a chili garlic sauce. It's called sambal olek, and you'll get it very easily at any Asian supermarket. You'll get it in Thai stores. You'll get it in Indonesian grocery stores. You'll get it in Indian supermarkets. We will be using some good old soy sauce. I'm just using regular store-bought sauce, which is easily available.
What was that brand of Indian soy sauce?
Ching's.
Ching?
Chings, yeah, chings. And it's super dark, so be very careful with it because just a drop could make all your noodles go black. So you have to be super duper careful. Okay, so into these noodles, we are also, and because we're making it street style, I will be adding a hint of sugar. They also add MSG, which I will not be adding. So if you're okay with using some Ajinomoto or Sal de Gusto, whatever you buy it as, go right ahead and use it. I just don't have it in my house. I don't use it in my house. So that's where we're at. Let me just show you quickly what these charred vegetables are starting to look like. So that's just an onion that's been allowed to sit. So even though it's called stir fry, you don't have to constantly stir it, right? So patience is a virtue that you must have. Just because it says stir fry, do not keep stirring it. You got to let it be and let it come in contact with the surface so it can do its thing. Okay, so the next step involves the soy sauce, the red chili paste, a little bit of vinegar and sugar and salt. So I did salt the noodles when I boiled them, but they're not overly salted. And I've used Himalayan pink salt. If you have a preference for any other kind of salt, go right ahead. Also, if you're boiling a whole batch of noodles and putting them in your fridge, then try to use either sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, because when you use regular chemical-based salt and eat the food from the fridge the next day, it does change the taste of your food. So when you're doing preserving, when you're eating something the next day, just be careful. That salt can change a lot of things in the taste of your food. Okay, so all these little curly charred wisps that you can see, that's what's going on right now. And I'm going to push this to the back so it'll continue to cook. And I'm going to work with my noodles in this space, right? So we don't have to do any of those jazzy moves like the chefs in the Chinese or the hibachi grill, you know, the things, we don't have to do any of that. We're just going to make it our own. Just going to add a little bit of this oil. If you're oil free, you know, feel free to. Some people also use some slick Thai red chilies, and you totally can. I just don't do heat in my food. Yes, I'm Indian, but I don't like heat, so that's where I'm at. Okay, so let's just go in and actually create a. Give me a second. I'm just gonna go in and eyeball all the sauces that I'm gonna use. So in goes the soy sauce. All the measurements are actually in the recipe that have been given out to you. And again, be careful if you're going to use a dark soy sauce, then please don't overdo it. It can totally ruin your dish. Always keep an eye on whatever's going on in the wok, because sometimes it just gets out of control. I'm only using a little bit of this and I don't measure anything. I just feel that I lose my intuitive connection with my food if I start to measure everything. Perhaps that's why I'll never be a baker, or a good one at least. All right, so it smells absolutely incredible right now because the onions, the ginger, the garlic, everything is charred, it's caramelized. The cabbage, the onion is like developing into charred wisps, you can see. And there's a nice browning there. I'm gonna go in and add everything into this. So the sauces, the sugar, everything that's in your recipe that didn't go in yet needs to go in now. A little bit of the salt. Give it a good mix. And also I'm going to put garam masala, which is the Indian 5-spice. So take note that it's not the Chinese 5-spice, it's Indian 5-spice, which can get pretty strong. And it already has a combination of roasted cumin, cloves, cinnamon, black pepper. All of those things actually go into making garam masala. Okay, so the vegetables are ready. I'm going to put in the noodles, again, right in the front. So work towards the front where you're at and let the stuff in the back get the color that it needs, right? So this is what your wok looks like. I haven't mixed anything yet. This is what I'm working at because I want to get my noodles to be a little bit charred and smoky. And this stuff is continuing to cook as it touches the walls of the wok, right? Now I'm going to add all of my sauce here. I will also add a little vinegar. So interestingly, the recipe for street noodles takes more vinegar than soy sauce. I guess they like the tartness of it or whatever, but that's been the recipe for. You can add black pepper if you're a fan. Okay, and now you're going to mix everything together. So the fact that we took the time to prepare the noodles properly and did not let them stick to each other is actually going to come in very handy at this time, because nothing is going to stick to anything. And don't think that just because these are the vegetables that I've listed, these are the only things you can use. You can use any vegetables of your choice, any seasonal vegetables that you have at home. If you have picky eaters, just use the vegetables that they're more likely to eat. So if they eat broccoli, put broccoli instead of cabbage. If they eat cauliflower, put that. And just give it a good coat. Do not turn down the heat. And you don't want to overcook this now, because you don't want the noodles to be slimy and you don't want the cabbage to lose its crunch, right? If you want, you can add a couple of colored peppers just to give it a little oomph. And a little bit of green. Now, because it's Indian, of course, everything has to get topped with cilantro. Don't ask me why, but I guess you're not Indian enough if you don't top it with cilantro. So if you go to India and see tons of cilantro on your Chinese food, do not be surprised. Tag me and let me know I told you so. Okay, so that's our noodles that are absolutely ready to be served. It doesn't take that long at all. If I hadn't been doing the talking and I would have worked on the stovetop, this would probably take me about 8 to 10 minutes, and I would probably boil every time that I would prepare the vegetables. So that's how I would do it. Now I'm going to remove this from the wok because we're going to go jump right into our next dish. Let me plate this so you guys can see how gorgeous it looks. And then we can move on to the next thing. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's just get in here. I might add a little pinch of garam masala, so you know what, I'll taste it a little bit and make sure that it's well combined. You can actually work with 2 of these and give it a toss, so you make sure that everything is just well coated, right? And you can eat this by itself. You can eat it along with the next dish that we're about to make. I'm just going to give it a quick taste. Just want to make sure it's well seasoned. Perfect. So I feel personally that it needs a little more soy sauce because I like the dark color, and this is just a super light sauce that I have. It's not spicy at all, even though we added the red chili paste. There is a certain kick to it. It's a nice kind of kick. Okay, so let's just go ahead and plate this. So out of all the junk food that you get in India on the streets, mothers are most likely to allow you to eat this because they feel like there's a lot of vegetables in it. So children are able to convince their moms to let them eat this. Because Indian culture thrives hugely on homemade food. And moms kind of feel a little bit of a pain when their children express the desire to eat outside food. Unlike us. I feel happy. I feel like, if she's happy with the JC Chinese up the block, which is $7.99 for the lunch special, be my guest, honey, do it. She's as it is tired of my Indian food. So anyway, this is what it looks like. If you want more cilantro, I have more cilantro. Tex-Mex stuff, and then when I make Indo-Chinese stuff, I feel very proud of being Indian because I know that if there's cilantro in the recipe, baby, I got it in my fridge. So there you go. No more stolen moments. You can make this in your home in no time at all. I'm going to quickly empty this wok, and I'm ready to take any questions if you have any. We are going to jump into the next recipe real quick as soon as I'm done with cleaning this out. You can mute me because I'm sure you don't want me to put in the audio of scraping the pan. Not a very welcome sound, right? So yes, it's salty, but it's not super salty, so it's not high on sodium. You can actually control everything that you put in there because, it's your food, it's your body. And just because unhealthy things are available doesn't mean that we have to offer that to our children. So just a little bit of planning sometimes And inexpensive ingredients, especially with, this is stuff you'll have in your pantry. If you have no vegetables, you can use frozen vegetables. And it's the same thing. You can use water chestnut, you can use bamboo shoots, you can buy cabbage and stick it in your fridge. It never really goes bad. So there is no reason to eat unhealthy food. It takes the same amount of time to cook unhealthy food and the same amount of time to cook healthy food. Of course, once in a while you must indulge so that you don't feel deprived.
How did you add more oil to prevent the noodles from sticking?
When I took it off, when I was boiling them, I didn't add any oil to the boiling water, only because oil floats on top in the water. So it's really a waste of oil, and you think you did something, but it ain't doing nothing. So when you get it off and you rinse out the noodles with cold water, that's when you hit it with a little bit of oil, just so that they won't stick to each other. So that would be the time when you would do that.
Michelle, did that answer your question? Ask some more if you need to.
Yes, please, I'm here. And also when I teach a recipe, I try to encourage everybody to catch the glimpse of it, to capture the essence of it. So let's say if you wanted to do something Chinese and all you have is a head of broccoli, try to focus on the toolkit. What is the flavor toolkit? Like, what are the things that are negotiable in a recipe and what are the things that are non-negotiable? It's almost like saying, well, what are the things that I can stand in my kid if he changes, and what are the things I can't stand? So the fact that he's a mental and physically and mentally stable human being, that's non-negotiable. But the fact that they don't shower for 2 days because they're home, that's negotiable, right? So something like that. So try to capture the essence of where you're going with it. If you have a head of broccoli and you want to do a Middle Eastern twist to it, you know, you can do garlic, you can do lemon, you can do olive oil, you can roast it, and you can do something with that. If you want to take it the Indian route, you know, you can throw it into a can of chickpeas, you can put in some coconut milk, you can, so just try to capture the flavor profile or the flavor toolkit of whatever region it is that you want to feel inspired by, and you'll be able to transform ingredients into whatever you want to make them. And you'll be able to, like if we were doing noodles, so we can add basil to this. You can add a star anise to it, and it absolutely elevates the flavor profile that I'm originally teaching you. So right now, there's a lot of bell pepper and garlic that's dominating this. But if you added miso paste to this, or if you added some basil leaves, you want to make it into a Thai recipe, add some peanuts, add some ginger, more ginger, add some peanuts, add a little more sweetness, add some coconut milk. So there's so many ways to know. Once you know the flavor profile, once you know the toolkit, it's yours forever. It's not going anywhere. All right, so we are now moving along to the next recipe, which is the stir-fry tofu, and I'm going to start with a confession. So the tofu that I ended up with is actually definitely a little more jiggly than I thought. So I bought firm tofu, but I just didn't buy the regular brand that I buy. And you see how jiggly this is? So this is not a good news. And I've tried to, press it down and get the water out, but still it's a little too jiggly for me. So I'm going to treat it differently, but you're welcome to follow it like this if you end up with something that's more silky like this. And if you happen to have the right one, then just follow the recipe to the T. It will still work like a charm. All right, so we're going to start with some oil, again, drizzling it on the walls of this wok. The heat is on high. I'm going to wait for it to be smoking. And we are going to start with the holy trinity of Chinese cooking, which involves, I'm just going to spread the oil around nicely. So if my if my tofu had been firm, I would have started working the tofu first and added a little color to that. But because it's silky and I don't think it's going to hold up really well, I did a test before we actually started the class. I'm going to add it in the end, right? So depending on what kind of tofu you have, if you think it's going to take, being left on the wok and get some color around it, go for it. I'm going to start with broccoli first because it's going to be the toughest vegetable to cook and you still want to have that crunch. The first thing that goes in is tons of ginger, garlic, and I'm going to save just a little bit of garlic to add in the end. Remember I said we have to add it right in the end just to give it that nice flourish. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. And again, you can do this with any vegetables you have. Don't feel compelled to follow the list the way I have it. You can make it once with that, and then beyond that, please feel free to use your finger. I'm also going to use crushed red peppers to give it that nice fiery kick. Our noodles are pretty bland. We didn't really do any heat in that. I did not even use any black pepper. So when you're cooking or when you're in the kitchen, think about what do you think your pots and pans will be singing to you today, right? I gave you 2 options. Maybe there's a third option. Drop it in the chat box. Let's hear it out. Okay, so the first thing that goes in, we have saved some onion petals. So those are definitely going to go in. This was the same 1 onion. I used half in this recipe and half I used in the noodles. So I see that the ginger garlic is sticking to the bottom of the pan, so I'm just going to add a little more oil. Just start, keep it going. You know, this is so noisy. I think I'm going to switch out and use this instead. I'm going to show you a view of what it looks like. So as the ginger and the garlic start to cook, the aromas get released, but the color also changes. And then when you put in the onions, they actually kind of get well combined. And you keep sauteing it for a little bit and then let it be. Same thing, just spread it out in the pan and let it do its thing. Let them get to know each other. In goes the broccoli. This is just regular broccoli. I've washed, did not blanch it. No blanching required, just directly. The least bit of processing that you have to do, I think, is a win-win, not only for your health, but also the amount of time that you're going to be spending in the kitchen, right? Okay. Now, the difference in this recipe is that the last thing to go in, which is quite different from what you see in your notes, is that I will be putting tofu in the end, right? If it had been the right tofu, then I would have put it first, charred it, and then removed it, and then added it back to my pan. So sometimes you have to be brand loyal. So don't do the stupid thing that I did. Just because it was on sale, Nupur, that does not mean you have to get it. Okay, noted. Let me know if you're guilty of that crime. I know I am. I was like, oh, it says farm, and it says, you know, tofu, so let me get it. Not even close to what I was used to working with. But that's okay, we learn. And if you're a fan of paneer, which is the Indian cottage cheese, this recipe with paneer is bomb. You don't have to do any prep, you just cut it and put it right in there. So I'm just gonna continue to stir this so the broccoli can get some char. And you're gonna leave it in there to do its thing. What's your family's favorite Chinese takeout dish? Is it kung pao? Is it what kind of sauce? Is it garlic, the brown garlic sauce, the ever so famous, which is actually loaded with sugar, believe it or not? So we had gotten to a stage in our life where every time we would call the local takeout Chinese, he would just see our last name. And then my daughter and my nephew would order the same thing. So he would say, yeah, chicken with broccoli, no broccoli, extra sauce, and extra hot. Just from looking at the caller ID, like no other words were exchanged. So it kind of became the signature that we came to be known for. Okay, so this is continuing to cook. I'm going to push this to the back. And I'm going to get ready to make my sauce. For this, what we're going to need is cold water. Some people like to use veggie broth. Some people like to use bouillon, but I feel that H2O is F-R-E-E. And we know exactly what it's made of. So we're not putting any extra sodium. We're not putting anything that's been sitting on a shelf for God knows how many months, right? So I'm going to just make the sauce with water. No problem there. This is going to continue to get some color on it. I'm also going to add in some bell peppers. So in Indian style Chinese, there's just a lot of use of bell peppers. Not so much the colored ones, but the green ones, and they call it capsicum. So for everything, capsicum is the king. That's what they call it, capsicum. Okay, right? So all of these are just going to sit in this wok, and they're going to build the char. I'm just going to toss it and bring it onto itself. I'm going to toss it, push it back, and bring it onto itself so that the new surface can get exposed. You can see right now the onions are charring, but then I want the broccoli to be cooked on all sides. I'm going to spread it out like I showed you before. Now for the sauce. To this sauce, what we are going to need is, we will make what is called a slurry. Into this is going to go something very classic, which you've probably never seen in Chinese cooking, but it's a very, very common thing to put in Indian style Chinese. I have cumin powder, and this is freshly ground. All of my spices are actually freshly ground in small batches. So even when you order spices from my website, it's all made to order. There's also some coriander seed powder. That's going to go in. Yeah, totally unheard of, but I'm telling you, it's going to elevate the taste of your dish. High on this. What else are we putting in? We are putting in, for the slurry, we are going to combine the water and cornstarch, and we're going to dissolve the lump. So let's get some cornstarch. This is the thing that gives your sauce that thickness, and it gives it that gloss. It's especially good if you're on an oil-free diet, because you can actually trick people to think that there's oil in it, but when the cornstarch actually thickens, it has a nice sheen to it. So people would never know that there's no oil in your dish. If you do chicken, if you do shrimps, you can actually saute those first, take them out, and then do the same process and then add them back towards the end. Okay.
Nupur, are there a lot of Chinese restaurants in India?
I'm sorry?
Are there a lot of Chinese restaurants in India?
Oh my God, yes, at every corner. And it's funny that within one restaurant, you'll have different menus. So it'll say Mughlai, it'll say Continental, it'll say Indian Chinese, and it'll say South Indian. So they just don't want to lose your business. So regardless of whatever you like, if you're a family of 4 and you all 4 of you like different food, there's something for everybody. And there's a lot of vegetarians in India. So, you know, they just don't want the family to go 4 different places for a meal. All the restaurants actually make it very easy for you to eat vegetarian food. And they offer all kinds of varieties. Okay, now I'm going to go in and add this slurry. Let me just quickly show you what the vegetables look like right now. I had to turn down the heat just a tad bit. So you can see that the broccoli is getting charred. Let me show you. You see how the brown bits, that's how it's getting charred. So it has a nice color. I see some garlic that's getting stuck to the broccoli, which is always a great thing. I'm going to put a little bit of salt because we have not used salt at all. Again, I'm using Himalayan pink, but you can use whatever you want, baby. Okay, and I'm also going to teach you a hack. Like, what do you do when you have leftovers of this, right? We want to be able to repurpose things. We are not wasting any food, honey. These kids don't know what it takes to schlep all those bags, come up the stairs. They have no idea. So trick these people, feed them everything you make. And when they leave your house, trust me, they will remember everything that came out of your kitchen. And they're going to miss it, which is a good thing. All right, so I'm going to put in the slurry in a bit. First, I'm going to add some soy sauce, right? Just to get things smoking up. And it also has to deglaze a little bit really quickly before the slurry starts to thicken everything. The quick dash of soy sauce helps to deglaze. Oh my God, it smells so good in here. I wish you could come here and eat this food. That'd be so nice, right? Some people also like to add some tomato ketchup. So you know what, if that's your thing, if you like it sweet and salty and tangy and everything in between, add a squirt of ketchup. Nobody needs to know. And if you like it smoky, you can even add a squirt of barbecue sauce. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, the combination of the umami from the soy and the sweetness from the barbecue, yes, it's a lot of sugar, but try it sometime. It ain't that bad. Oh my God, look, after the soy sauce, I've got to show you the color of these onions. Wouldn't you like to eat that? They're still crunchy, but you see how nice and charred they are? So that deglazing definitely helps. Now we're going to spread the vegetables and we will go in and add our slurry. We may not need the whole thing depending on how much sauce you want. So if you're serving this with fried rice, you may need a little more. Well, okay, with Indians, they need everything. If they could have something to dip their pizza in, they would probably make a curry that goes with that as well. So don't listen to me. Just pay attention to what you're going to be serving it with. And if it calls for more liquid, hey, go for it. And if you feel like you just want it to be just barely sticking to each other and creating some kind of a base where all the vegetables can float, that's fine too. We have yet to add our tofu, do not forget. So we definitely want to, and immediately as soon as you add the slurry, the temperature does come down. But do not use cornstarch and hot water because it will give you lumps. Right? So cornstarch has to go in with the cold water. We are going to wait for it to come to a simmer. And we are getting ready with our tofu. At this point, if you wanted to add, let's say basil, or if you wanted to add star anise, you could do that now because it's going to help to draw out all the flavors. It's going to infuse the broth with all of that. You can add miso paste. And when all of the deglazing is happening and all the juices from the vegetables are coming together into the broth, anything that you add in terms of aromatics at that stage, when you add things at different timings, when you eat that same food, those taste buds explode at a certain time, which is why when you eat Indian food, you experience the layers of flavor, right? So anything that you add at a different time will have a layered flavor. So if you made a dish in the oven where everything gets mixed at the same time and boom, done, when you eat it, it has a flat taste. When you eat something that's been simmered over time and different things have been added to the pot, when you eat it, you'll see that it has layers of flavor. Like it has an initial taste, and then you experience it a little more, and then you experience it a little more, which is why it works and plays with different parts of your palate. So it's always enticing. Let me get the tofu ready. Meet Mr. Jiggles, my new boyfriend. Yay. He's up to no good. All right, so let's see how it's simmering. I'll show you how thick it's gotten. And I'm telling you, the way the cumin and the coriander powder smells right now, oh, you could be very well traveling in it. The sauces, you see this? You see how thick it is? And we haven't even added the tofu yet. So this is pretty thick. And it smells incredible because it has really taken it and wiped it clean. So I'm going to add a little bit of the red chili sauce, which is the chili garlic sauce. I may add a little sugar, I'm not sure yet. Or I may just add a little plain water. So to this, I'm going to add Mr. Jiggles. Get in there, bro. That's right. See how jiggly it is? I've never had this in my house. I mean, I've eaten mapo tofu and stuff where the texture is different, but this is some, yeah, you know, brand loyalty is something I should have stuck with, right? Not because you're on sale. I wasn't trying to be cheap. I was just trying to try something new. All right. So we're going to give it a minute and give it a gentle toss so it will get coated, like just so lift it from below and then flip it onto itself. Lift it from underneath there and flip it onto itself. You're not trying to break the tofu. You're just trying to, you know, introduce it to the neighborhood. So my new boyfriend is going to the neighborhood. Yeah. To the veggie hood. All right. I think it needs a little bit more water the way my family likes it because they want everything soupy and runny. But for the purpose of serving it with the lo mein, I think this is perfect consistency. You don't want any more thickness than that. And it's really strong on the coriander and the cumin. So I think I might use a little vinegar to balance that off, to cut into the, so it almost has like a Mongolian feel. You know, like how you have these Mongolian dishes where they use the whole red peppers and they use the Szechuan red chili peppers and then they use the cumin powder. So it almost has a very Mongolian feel. I don't think if you went to China, you won't eat anything that looks like that, right? I'm gonna give it a quick stir. And remember what I said about adding the garlic just before we're ready to remove it from the heat? I haven't forgotten about it. So that's that teeny bit of garlic, you see? But it's going to do the trick. Because when you eat it, you will experience garlic in all its forms. You will experience it sauteed. You will experience it slightly burnt because it got charred. And you will experience, pow, the raw garlic. So if any Italians in the house, whoop, whoop, yeah, you never have enough garlic. And of course, the piece de resistance, which is the bam, cilantro. So cannot have enough cilantro. Indian style Chinese, that's where we're at. If you want to add sweet notes to this, you can definitely use honey. You can use rock sugar candy, which is easily available in most stores. Some people even use maple syrup. I mean, I don't know. Or just good old sugar. It's not going to harm you that much once in a while if you indulge. So the good thing is if you make it sweet, spicy, sugary, salty, and everything all at once, then it really is a very satiating dish, especially if you're vegetarian or vegan, because then you have actually satisfied all the pockets of flavor that your palate responds to. And you won't be missing out on anything. You won't feel like, oh, I really needed to eat that steak or whatever. Okay, so this is simmering away. That's our dish right there. And you can see there's enough sauce. So you can top it on top of your noodles. You can eat it just by itself. And I'm going to check for seasoning. So I want to make sure that it's not
Nupur,
super duper
open it up one more time.
spicy. It's a little spicy for me. So maybe I will put a little sugar because it's spicy for me, but then I also have to add a little more sauce to it for my family. Let me plate it really quickly so you can see how it looks. If you're doing the same thing with chicken or shrimp, you can use a bouillon cube, but then be careful of how much salt and how much soy sauce you use because you're going to need to balance that. Now for the last finishing touch that's going to go on to this is actually something that you won't see in Indian cooking, but this magic ingredient is something that can totally elevate your Chinese dishes and make you feel like you're sitting in an expensive Chinese lounge restaurant. So this, just a few drops of it added right in the very end, mwah, that's all you need. So if you didn't do any of this work and you did this secret sauce, that's all you need, okay? So I'm gonna quickly turn off the heat and plate this baby. And let me tell you, yes.
What kind of vinegar did you use?
I've just used Heinz distilled vinegar. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. I try to make ethnic food with supermarket ingredients so that it's accessible for everybody. But if you have some fancy vinegar that's coming from some cellar in Austria, like, hey, go for it, you know, no problem. Okay, so that's where we are at. Like I said, the last thing to go in is just a slight drizzle of this. Oh my God. It has that deep earthy flavor and definitely get the toasted version. So this brand that I have is called Lee Kum Ki and it's pure black sesame seed oil. So it has a nice toasty kind of a woody aroma to it and it absolutely elevates your dish. Let me tell you, when you serve this and you serve this all on one day, you know what your family is going to say to you? I must have done something good because here you are standing there cooking for me whether or not you should. So yes, they will acknowledge it. They will appreciate it. I hope they will appreciate it. And like I promised towards the end of this, I had told you I will tell you a quick hack of what you can do with leftovers. So let's say you have some of this leftover tofu dish, right? What are you supposed to do with that? Well, you get a pot of water and you boil it with some salt and then you gently add this to that and you let it simmer and then it becomes soup and then you adjust your seasoning by adding a little bit of soy sauce, maybe a little bit of this, and you can serve it as soup. You can put a steamer on top of the bubbling soup and put your dumplings on top. That's another meal right there, right? So make some extra batches, make the most of it, cash out whatever groceries you're spending on. And I hope that you will give this a try. I hope your family will enjoy this Indian style Chinese. And of course, when things get normal, I'll be happy to open the door for you. You can come to my house and eat it with me. So that was my presentation for today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Let's see. Let me. All right. Well, I really appreciated that class, and I really love the singing.
Thank you.
Because I'm Korean, so I got to do karaoke with you one day.
I'm not even a trained singer. I just do it because I just love it. But my score is limited at best.
Yeah, no, I think you're a great singer. My song is "I'll Be There" by Michael Jackson.
That's a good one. I told you there's an option C.
I thought that I would just say thank you for an amazing class and your lightness.
Thank you for joining me. I just really wanted to, say thank you to Jeff because he's really been very persistent, and I appreciate his patience because I can sometimes be quite elusive, but he was really on top of it. So all of the tech support, all the people that like made it happen, who you don't see right now, but they're there. I greatly want to give a shout out to all of you and everybody who decided to spend their evening with me. That really means a lot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, before I mute everyone and give you a little a show of appreciation, I wanted to tell you that our next food class is a knife skills class taught by Diane de la, her last name is going over my head right now. But Diane's a regular member of our squad, and she's teaching people how to sharpen knives on a stone. It's an old skill technique, but very the best sharpening. And then she's going to teach you different styles of slicing, dicing, terminology. That's on the 25th of June, which is a Thursday from 7 to 8. So I'm just going to give everyone a little unmute. If you have any questions, this might be the last time to shout it out. Nupur, did you want to give people your contact information?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is queenscurrykitchen.com. You can see a list of classes that I offer. You can see some products that I offer. The whole idea is to create Indian food in a New York minute, and that's what I stand by. Whatever you see there is really geared towards that. I also do a Facebook Live every day. So if you go on my Facebook page, which is also Queen's Curry Kitchen, you can see tons of Facebook Lives to make your Indian food, to just, simplify the game and to really make you feel like it's achievable. So definitely check it out. And whatever I make on Facebook, if you can't see that, I definitely post a result of the Facebook Live on Instagram. And if you like that end picture, you can always go back and look at the recipe. There is also a YouTube channel that I just started during COVID because I had so much time. So I started that, but it's nothing but a recap of all the Facebook Lives. So you can follow me anywhere. You can join me there. You can ask questions. You can ask your curry Q&As. And I thrive on that because that gives me ideas about how else to serve you better with the mission that I'm going after. So my book is way back over there. It's called The Vegan Indian Home. It's available in hard copy and in an e-download. But there's a lot of free content because my purpose is for you to enjoy the process, to get to know your ingredients better and be intuitive in your kitchen. And, bring your family into the dining room, bring them to the dining table because that's where most of the conversations happen. There's two ways to do that. One, turn off the Wi-Fi so everybody will come and see like what the heck happened. And two, start cooking good food so they'll come anyway. I hope you do the latter instead of the former. But thank you all for joining me. I greatly appreciate the support. And special thanks to Uni, who, despite all the gaps that we had in our communication, she was like, no, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. So here we are. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So good. So good.
Thank you. Take good care, everybody, and have a good night. You can always message me currykitchen@gmail.com.
It's wonderful.
You know where to find me. Thank you again. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.